Hate your job, hate hustle culture, or don't know if your job is the right one for you? It's not just about job satisfaction. In the end, the job ought to be meaningful in some significant way. At Philosophy to You, we've designed a series of short quizzes to help you get a clearer perspective on whether or not your work is meaningful. The reason why it's called the identity quiz is because sometimes the source of dissatisfaction and the lack of meaningfulness in one's job can be bound up with the way in which we identify with our job or career. Essential to this quiz is the distinction between job on the one hand and career on the other. So think about a job as something that I have at a specific employer, whereas the career is much wider. So I can think about my career as an insurance underwriter, and I can have a job at XYZ insurance company. Question 1. How much do you identify with your role, not your employer job, as your calling? How much do you feel that what you're doing is what you ought to be doing? Question 2. How dissatisfied are you with your current job or employer? The first option we're going to consider is that you're dissatisfied with your job and you're also dissatisfied with your career. And that's sort of an easy out, as it were, because all you have to do is start looking for a career that's going to interest you. The one thing you do have to bear in mind is that the sooner you start looking, the better, because the longer you stay in that particular job, the more your skills are going to be marketable according to those skills that you've learned in that job. So for example, if you learned how to be a claims adjuster with the insurance industry and you stay in that job for several years, you're going to find that when you apply to other jobs, you're just going to have those sets of skills and experience. So it might limit you in terms of your choices. The second option we're going to consider is rather straightforward. You identify with your career because you really love what you do, but you don't identify with your employer. So then the solution is quite simple. Get proactive and start looking at the competitive market to see if you can find an employer of choice. The third option is much more pervasive. You're not only dissatisfied with your job, your employer, but you're dissatisfied with the way that job is represented within the industry, within your nation, or perhaps even globally. And yet you really identify with your career. So for example, you could be an academic scholar, not only unhappy at your particular university, but dissatisfied with the state of higher education as it is in your particular nation. In that case, you're going to have to ask some hard questions about whether you want to stay with that particular career because it's a calling and you're going to try to make the best of your situation and hopefully things improve. Or if things get very desperate, you're going to have to think very creatively about looking at the skills you've learned in a particular career and see how they might transfer to some other career. You might even look at things you love to do and try to find ways to make that lucrative in terms of employment. The key thing is that this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of planning and research. So the sooner you get on it, the better it is for you. If you'd like to know more about whether your work is meaningful and right for you, visit philosophytoyou.com, where meaningful work meets a meaningful life. You'll find more diagnostic games and tools and details on how you can work with me, Dr. Todd May.